So in this video looking at algebra and expanding double brackets, I'll be going through what prior knowledge you need to know to expand double brackets, them being algebraic, multiplying and collecting like terms. And we'll be also going through two of the most popular ways of expanding double brackets, which is using the grid and using loops, also known as FOIL. And then we'll also be looking at some extensive questions or contextual questions where this topic is combined with another topic, and I'll talk you through how we can use this method to answer the question. So when expanding brackets, there are several methods we can use to do this correctly. Some take longer with a set method, but you're less likely to make a mistake, whereas with others they're quick, but not concentrated means you're very easy and very prone to making silly mistakes. So like most things in maths, it's not only important to find a method that works for you, but also to maximise your marks by including correct working out in case you do make a mistake. And with practice, things will get quicker and things will get easier, and that will kind of coincide with your understanding. Now, when expanding brackets, there are two popular methods. One is using grids and the other is using loops. And with this form of double brackets, there's also a method called FOIL, which if I just write down and add that to the notes. So in terms of the loops, it's sometimes, and you may have seen this in a revision guide or on other websites or textbooks, where it's called FOIL, which I'll go through and kind of relate to when I tend to prefer to call using loops, just because it kind of works with all methods, but FOIL is very, very similar, if not the same, in certain aspects. Now, to master this topic, you will need to be good at multiplying, including using algebraic terms and collecting like terms. Now, before we move on to expanding brackets, let's have a look at those two topics that we mentioned there. So let's have a look. So looking at the refresh, now if you want to have a go at working these 14 questions out before I actually go through them, that's entirely up to you. However, I'm going to go straight into working through the answers. So for question 1 now, the reason why the times is written in red is so that it's not to get confused with the x, and obviously using this software it's a bit difficult to have a curly x, which is what should be written. So when you've got x times x, then we can say that that there is going to be x squared. Now, the key thing when you're multiplying with algebraic terms is knowing that you can only multiply numbers, so multiply numbers with numbers and letters with letters. Now there, if you remember that, you're going to be absolutely fine. So with question 2, here we've got 2 and we've got in this first term, and we've got no numbers in the second. We have, because we've actually got 1x. So 2 times 1 is 2, and then x times x is x squared. Now if you take your thinking exactly like that, by taking it slow, you'll find that this is going to be relatively quite simple. So with question 3, here we've got a number in the first, just a number in the first term, and in the second term we've got a number and a letter. So here we can only multiply numbers with numbers, so 4 times 7 is 28, and I've got m times no letter, so I've just got an m. For question 4, again very similar, this time we've got a negative number, so again I'm going to multiply minus 3 by 6, which gives me minus 18. So again, 3 times 6 is 18, a negative times a positive is a negative, so it's just minus 18. And again, we've got a single letter, so it's just p. For question 5, we've got 4x times 3x, so again, multiply the numbers with the numbers, so 4 times 3 is 12, and x times x is x squared. And then with question 6, I've got 2 times 6, which is 12 again. And here I've got m times p. Now, because they're not the same letter, I can't combine them using powers, so then that's just simply going to be mp. Now, when you have got two letters multiplying together, it's good practice for you to write them in alphabetical order. So if you were to write 12pm, although it represents a time, you wouldn't lose any marks, but again, try and keep your letters in alphabetical order where possible. And finally, for question 7 on this section, so here we've got minus 5 times minus 2, so 5 times 2 is 10. A negative times a negative is a positive, so I'm just going to write a little plus there. Just again, if there's no sign there, you always assume it's positive, but again, there's no harm in writing a plus. And c times c is c squared. So there are your answers to those 7 multiplying and simplifying algebraic terms. So moving on to, let's use a different colour for this one, let's go for this one. So moving on to the second section, which is looking at collecting like terms. So again here you can only collect letters that are the same, but also the same power. And again, I'll move on to that when we look at powers, moving on to questions 6 and 7. So for question 1, I've got 2a plus 4a, which gives me 6a. For question 2, I've got 6x take away 2x, which is 4x. And with question 3, now here I've got minus 12 plus 7, so that's going to give me minus 5x. And again, it's always worth remembering that the first term is where you start at, and then the second, when you're adding or subtracting, basically tells you direction and by how many places. For question 4, we've got 4x take away 12x, which gives me with minus 8x. With question 5, I've got minus x minus 13x, which gives me minus 14x. Now with question 6, you can see that I've got a single x squared, so I'm going to always have 4x squared because that's the only x squared I've got in this particular equation. So the only things I can join together are the x's. So if you treat this square part of the expression as like we've done with questions 1 to 5, so I've got 3x plus 8x, which gives me 11x. Now I can't simplify this further, that is the final answer, so this is not well, let's say 15x cubed. You can't join the two things together because we're adding, not multiplying. And also if you were multiplying, it definitely would be 15 because it'd be 4 times 11, which is 44. So it's worth mentioning that this is your final answer for question 6. Similarly for question 7, so again I've got 10x squared, so I leave that alone because that's the only x squared I can see in this expression. Then I've got minus 7 plus 3. So minus 7 plus 3 is minus 4x, and there is your final answer. So moving to our main topic of expanding single brackets. So again, it's worth just refreshing what we know here. Now, I'm going to introduce the grid method and the loop method for these particular questions. So I'm going to do 2 sets. So the first thing I'm going to do is using the grid. So how we set up the grid is, you can see I've got 3 outside the bracket, so I'm going to put a 3 there. And I've got 2 things inside my bracket. One of them is x and the other is plus 5. And that's the top, so the bracket goes on the top and the thing that goes outside the bracket goes along this side there. Now the next thing I'm then going to do is do some multiplying from the grid. So I've got 3 times x, which is 3x, and I've got 3 times plus 5, which gives me plus 15. So the final answer here is 3x plus 15. If I then moved on to the second question, so here I'm going to set up my grid, and I've got a 5 outside the bracket and I've got a 2x and a minus 4. So again, I'm going to do 5 times 2x, which is 10x, and 5 times minus 4, which is minus 20, giving me an answer of 10x minus 20. And then similarly for question 3, I've got 4m outside the bracket, and I've got a 2m and a minus 5. Now again, you can only multiply numbers with numbers, letters with letters. So I've got 4 times 2, which is 8, and m times n, which is mn. And then I've got 4 times minus 5, which is minus 20, and I've just got an m. So the final answer here, I'm just noticing I've not done the right colour, is 8mn minus 20m. And then finally for question 4, using this method, I've got x outside the bracket, and I've got x and I've got a plus y. So x times x, let's remember in a different colour this time, we've got x squared, and I've got x times plus y, which gives me plus xy. And again, the reason why it's not x plus y is because we are actually multiplying the grids in terms of the rows and the columns together. So this will give me a final answer of x squared plus xy. Now, using the loop method, so if I just put a line through each of these, I'll show you how we do the loop method straight from here. So if I write the question out again, so I've got 3 plus, no, not y, I've got a 5. And let me just quickly write out all the questions again. And let's have a look at the answers for here. So let's use, what colour not to use green? Oh no, we have to use green, let's go for orange. Now the loop method is basically, rather than drawing a grid, all we're going to do is multiply everything inside the bracket by everything outside the bracket. So here 3 times x is 3x, and then I've got 3 times positive 5, which is 15. And you can see there that this gives me the exact same answer as this. The only difference is, rather than drawing boxes, I'm drawing loops instead. So here I've got 5 times 2x, which is 10x, and then I've got minus 5 times 4, which is 20, and again the same answer. And then here I've got 4m times 2n, so I've got 4 times 2, which is 8, and then m times n, which is mn, minus 4 times 5, which is 20, and I've got an m. And then finally for this one, x times x, which gives me x squared, and x times y, which gives me xy. So you don't have to do both methods. This is using the grid. So the top method is using the grid, and the second method is using loops. And you can really choose whichever you prefer. Personally, the bottom method is probably quicker and a lot more efficient because you don't have to draw boxes. However, the one key mistake that people make when using the loops is if I had, let's say I had 5x plus 3, that a lot of students, what they do is they do the first loop, which is 5x, but then they forget the second term. So you've got to multiply everything outside the bracket by everything inside the bracket. So that there is wrong, when really it should be 5x plus 15, and that there is correct. So moving on to expanding double brackets, we're going to adopt the two methods that we've used previously for single brackets, and you can choose which one is best for you. So typically I would go for the fact that if you're just starting off and you're not that comfortable with using algebra and expanding brackets, I'd go for the grid method, simply because it displays your work a lot clearly. It does take you a little bit of a while, but you're less likely to make any mistakes, and if you do, you're still more likely to get some working out methods and marks. For the loop method, it's definitely a lot easier and definitely a lot quicker, and I think once you get your idea of your head around this, then using a loop method might be a little bit easier. Loop method is also called forward as well, which again I'll go through when I go through that method. So let's start off with this question. Now typically speaking, here we've got two brackets, hence double brackets, and what you'll find is that you've got x, which is usually the first term in each bracket, which is not always the case, and you've got a number which is being plus or subtracted. Now in this particular two double brackets, we've got two pluses, and we'll see how it changes from when we have one of each or two negatives. So starting off with the grid methods, we'll just write grid method. Then just like before, we're going to have one, if I just set up my grid, and you can see that as we've got two things in each of the brackets, I'm going to end up with 2. Now that table's not the most neatest, but let's go from here. So the first bracket I've got x and I've got a plus 3, and in the second bracket I've got x and I've got plus 2. Now it doesn't really matter which one you have going across and which one you've got going down vertically. It won't really make a difference at all. So it's entirely up to you. So if I wrote x plus 3 going down, that would be fine, and x plus 2 going across, again, that would be absolutely fine. As long as you've got that one bracket is going vertically and one bracket is going horizontally at the top of your headings, then that is going to be absolutely fine. So let's have a look. I wasn't expecting that to disappear, so let's just add an extra line like so. So what we're going to do now is going to multiply the two things together, and we're going to get our four components. So x times x is x squared, x times 3 is 3x, and again, numbers with numbers, letters with letters, so when we're multiplying a number with a letter, we just stick the two things together. And going by the rules of algebra is that the number always comes ahead, so I wouldn't write that as x3. And then complete the bottom row, I've got 2 times x, which is 2x, and I've got positive 2 times positive 3, which is positive 6. Now once I've got this, all I then need to do is to write them out again. So in terms of these four components that I've written in blue, so I've got equals x squared plus 3x plus 2x plus 6. Now to make your life a lot easier, when your brackets are given in this formation where you've got x's first and then the numbers, then I'd recommend that you write it going in this order. So you've got z, so this box first, then this box, then this box, and then finally this box here. So if I just number that 1, 2, 3 and 4, then it makes your life a little bit easier. Now the only thing we've got to do now is collect the like terms. So what I can always do is, if you set it up this way, then you're only going to simplify the terms involving x's. So here we've got x squared, and then we've got 3x plus 2x, which is positive 5x, and then the number at the end becomes 6, and there we go, and there is our final answer. Now if I was to use the loop method, or the FOIL method as it's sometimes called, now FOIL is a way of looking at, so we do the first ones first, and again, then it's outers, then it's the inners, and then it's the last. Now this is a method that's commonly used, however I'm just going to go for normal loops just because I find it a lot easier than working with FOIL, and also the fact that what you want to try and do is, if you can set your work out like what's in this box here, it makes simplifying a lot easier, because the only thing you need to simplify are those two middle terms of x. So continue with this then, let's get a difficult pen, let's go for this one. So here if I write the question out again, I've got x plus 3 and I've got x plus 2. So what I'm going to do first is, now generally when you expand your brackets and loops, you multiply everything outside the bracket by everything inside the bracket. Well, in this case we've got 2 brackets. So first things first, I'm going to multiply x by x, which gives me x squared, and then I'm going to multiply the first term here by the second term here, which is 2, in which I've got plus 2x. Now once I've multiplied everything in that second bracket by the first term in the first bracket, I'm now going to multiply the second term by everything in the second bracket. So here I've got plus 3 times 3x, which is plus 3x, and I've got 3 times positive 2, which is 6. Now as you can see in this line that I've got here, is that this is exactly the same as what I had there. And again, the only difference is I've not had to draw a grid, but I've still got the same line now. For working out, that's basically what you need to get the 1 mark. And then the final thing we've then got to do is to combine the two terms, of collecting the like terms of x's together. So here we get the answer of x squared plus 5x plus 6. So you can see how both methods give you the exact same answer, but again it all depends on which method you prefer that gets you the right answer. So let's have a look at some questions that are very, very similar to this, and again if you want to pause the video and have a go at these questions yourself, that's entirely up to you, and then check your answers by replaying it. I'm just going to go through these answers as it is. So number 1, so I've got, if I just set up my grid, now I'm going to try and do in both methods so you can see and check, so you can see if you've made a mistake, where that mistake has been made. So I've got x plus 3, x plus 2, and I've just noticed that this is the exact same question as I chose in the example I've done above. So let's just quickly fill this in. So that gives me an answer of x squared plus 5x plus 6. For number 2, we've got, let's draw a grid again. X plus 5 and x plus 3. Now one thing I have not done is, if I was using the loops, then what I should have written when I use loops is x squared plus 2x plus 3x plus 6, which gives me the final answer of x squared plus 5x plus 6. Now moving on to question 2, so I've got x squared, 3x, 5x and 15, and again the only two things I need to combine are these two boxes. The two diagonal x squared and the number will always be there. So I've got x squared plus 3x plus 5x plus 15, which gives me x squared plus 8x plus 15, and there we go. For question 3, C I should say, let's make sure we do this properly. So that's question A, that's question B. So question C, we've got, so let's draw the grid again. So we've got x plus 1 and x plus 4. Now the fact that I'm writing plus 1 and plus 4 will make it a lot easier for you to multiply. Remember with regards to multiplying with positive and negative numbers. Now for this you could just write 1 and you'd still get the same answer, you just add the 4 boxes together inside. But when we start moving on to a combination of signs, then that's where it really does become important that you're including any signs that you're writing. So going back to this question, we've got x squared, 1x, 4x and 4, and writing each of those boxes together because I've added them all up gives me x squared plus 5x plus 4, and there is my final answer. For D, again setting up my box, I've got x plus 6 and x plus 4, so I've got x squared, 6x, 4x and 24, giving me, again, realise not doing the colour, so x squared plus 6x plus 4x plus 24. Now if you've got the 6x and the 4x of using loops the other way around, it's not a problem, because when you're adding, the order doesn't make a difference. And again, as long as the symbols are the same, so you've got plus in front of the 6x, a plus in front of the 4x, then that's absolutely fine. You're not going to lose any marks if yours is slightly different to mine, which gives me a final answer of x squared plus 10x plus 24, and there's the final answer. And then moving on to E. Now for E, I'm going to do the loop method and just show you how I can still get the same answers. Now each of the components I do, I'm going to write down is what you should have in one of the 4 boxes. So I've got x squared, I've got 7x, then I've got 5x, and then I've got 35. And which simplifies, just joining those two middle things together, I get x squared plus 12x plus 35, and there is the final answer. So let's have a look at the next set of questions. So here we've got one negative and one positive, and you'll find that this might be the case in the questions that you attempt, or if you were to get one in the exam. So again, let's go through both methods. So let's go through the grid method first. Now when you have got negatives inside the brackets, this is where it's really important you do write down the signs of the numbers in your headings of each of the columns and rows, as you can see what I've done here. So working this out, I've got x squared, and again remembering that we're multiplying, not adding, so I've got x plus 8x times 8 plus 8, x times positive 8, so I've got 8x, I've got minus 3x, and 8 times 3 is 24, and a positive times a negative gives me a negative number. So writing this out, I've got x squared plus 8x minus 3x minus 24. And again, if you've set it out correctly, your 2x's in the middle, then that's the only thing we've got to join together. So I've got x squared and I've got 8, take away 3, which is positive 5x minus 24. And again, if I was to use the loop method, so here I've got x plus 8, x minus 3, and working with the first one, so I've got x times x, which is x squared, x times minus 3, which is minus 3x, and then I've got 8 times x, which is positive 8x, and 8 times minus 3, which is minus 24. And then combining these two things together, so minus 3 plus 8 is positive 5, and as you can see, I've got the exact same answer as what I've got here. So again, it really doesn't matter which method you choose, you should get the same answer. So let's have a look at these questions. So again, these are where you've got a mixture of positive and negatives. Now, when you're working this out, the key thing to decide is where a lot of students go wrong is, one, if they're not multiplied when they've added when they should have multiplied. That's the whole point of doing this, is understanding it's multiplying out the brackets. So when you are getting rid of the brackets, you're always multiplying, and then collecting like terms, that's when you're adding or subtracting. So looking at A, now for these sets of questions, I'm going to go through the loop method, or what you should have in each of the boxes, just to save a bit of time in case you've fallen asleep. So with question A, you should have x squared plus 2x plus 5x minus 10. So they're the 4 components you should have in your boxes, and that simplifies to give me x squared, and I've got minus 2 plus 5, which is positive 3x minus 10. Now what you find is, actually if I just highlight this just so that you can see what I'm talking about, is you'll always find little shortcuts and little patterns that you recognise. Now if your positive number is bigger than your, well obviously it's going to be bigger, it is, let's say, if the digit is bigger on the positive number than it is on the negative number, then this that you have in your final answer will be positive. If your negative number digit, which in here is 7, is bigger than your positive digit, which here is 2, then you'll end up with a minus where that 3x is. So let's just have a look and show you what I mean. So if I look at B, so multiplying out the brackets, we get x squared plus 2x minus 7x minus 14. And so I've got x squared, and then I've got plus 2 minus 7, which is minus 5x minus 14. So as you can see, that the x squared is still in the same in the answer, the minus 14 is still in the answer, so the only thing I've got to combine are the x's. And for C, we've got x squared plus 3x minus 1x minus 3, and that simplifies to give me x squared plus 2x minus 3. So as you can see, my positive digit was bigger than my negative digit, which means I end up with a positive x in the answer. And then for D, I've got x squared minus 3x plus 4x minus 12, which gives me a final answer of x squared plus 1x, or just x, minus 12. Now if I was to write a 1, that's absolutely fine, but generally speaking, you don't really say 1x, you just say x. And then finally for E, we've got, I don't know why I've done that. We've got x squared plus 5x minus 5x minus 25. Now here we've got 5x, take away 5x, which is nothing, which just leaves me with x squared minus 25. Now if you were to write x squared plus 0x minus 25, you should still get the correct answer, but again we don't need this, so don't bother writing it. And again, if you use the grid methods, then what you should have in each of your boxes are these 4 components. So that's what you should have in your 4 boxes. For D, you should have 1 box of x squared, 1 box of minus 3x, 1 box of positive 4x, and 1 box of minus 12. And if you've used the loops, then again you should have exactly what I've got on screen, if not in a slightly different order. So let's move on to the next set of questions. So this is where we've got 2 negatives. As you can see, we've got minus 4x and minus 8x, minus x minus 4 and x minus 8. So again, using the grids, which I'm just going to set up again. And again, filling in the numbers, we've got x minus 4 and we've got x minus 8. So filling in the numbers, we've got x squared minus 4x and then minus 8x. And then here we've got 8 times 4, which is 32. 32. And we've got a minus times a minus, which gives me a positive 32. So the key thing here is when we've got a minus and minus, well, if the signs are the same, then this bottom corner box here will always be positive if your digits are at the end of each column. And I'll talk about that at the end when things are a different slightly order. So writing this out, then we've got x squared minus 4x minus 8x plus 32. And again, just combining those middle 2 values of or terms of x, we've got x squared minus 12x plus 32, and there's our final answer. And again, using the loop method, so if I just write out the question again. So again, I've got x times x, which is x squared, x times minus 8, which is minus 8x, and then I've got minus 4 times x, which is minus 4x, and then minus 4 times minus 8, which is positive 32. And then writing your final answer, I get, which is just combining these two things here, I get x squared minus 12x plus 32, and there is our final answer. So let's have a look at some practice questions from there. So again, if you want to have a go at these 5 questions where both the brackets are negative, then please do fast forward. Other than that, let's go through straight to the answers. So for question A, the correct answer there should have x squared minus 4x minus 3x plus 12, which gives me x squared minus 7x plus 12. For B, you should have x squared minus 6x minus 2x plus 12, which gives me x squared minus 8x plus 12. For C, I've got x squared minus 1x plus 1, which gives me x squared minus 2x plus 1. For D, we've got x squared minus 2x minus 7x plus 14, so that gives me x squared minus 9x plus 14. And for the last one here, for E, we've got x squared minus 5x minus 4x plus 20, which gives me x squared minus 9x plus 20. And there is our final answer. So again, depending on which method you use, loops or the grid method, you should have the middle column written down, and then your final answers where you've combined or collected the like terms of x. So the next type of question we get is what happens if you've got multiple numbers of x. So here we've got 2x plus 3 being multiplied by 3x minus 6. Well, the same thing kind of applies, and again, I'll show you both the grid method and the loop method. So again, we set up our grid, and inside we've got 2x plus 3, and we've got 3x minus 6. Now again, just like we did at the start of this video, when you're multiplying numbers and letters, you can only multiply numbers with numbers, letters with letters. So 3 times 2 is 6, and x times x is x squared. 3 times 3 is 9, and we've just got a single x, and then minus 6 times 2 is minus 12, and I've got x, and minus 6 times positive 3 is minus 18. So writing that out, I've got x squared plus 9x minus 12x minus 18, and then all I want to do is just combine these two things. So I've got 6x squared, and then it'll be minus 3x minus 18, and there is the final answer. Now if I went through the loop method, which again you might find easier to do, so again I've got, well, let's choose a different colour pen. Let's go for green. So we've got 2x times 3x, which is 6x squared, and then 2x times minus 6, which is minus 12x, and then I've got 3 times 3x, which is 9x, positive 9x, and then positive 3 times minus 6 is minus 18. And then just simplifying those two terms there, I get 6x squared minus 3x minus 18, and I get the exact same answer. So you can see there that even though we've got multiples of x inside our brackets, the method is exactly the same, so do not let that throw you off. So for these questions, let's just make the questions a little bit bigger so you can actually see them. So let's have a look at, so if you want to have a go at these questions, by all means have a go at them. If not, you can do them with me. So when you expand the brackets, or you're using the grid method, you should have the following terms. So you should have 4x squared plus 2x plus 6x plus 3, which gives me 4x squared plus 8x plus 3. For B, we should have 6p squared plus 15p minus 8p minus 20. So we've got 6p squared plus, and then we're going to have 7p minus 20. For C, we've got 3e squared minus 4e minus 9e plus 12. So we've got 3e squared minus 13e plus 12. And for D, we've got 8x squared plus 4x minus 12x minus 6. And collecting those like terms, we get 8x squared minus 8x minus 6. And then finally for E, we get 4x squared plus 6x minus 6x minus 9. And that simplifies with 6x and 6x cancelling each other out, in which all we're left with is 4x squared minus 9. And there we go. Now, there are a couple of things to bear in mind that could trick you out based on what I've taught you. Well, actually, let's move on to that, is when we're looking at squares. Now, when I'm teaching this to any class, I always set this as a chocolate challenge, because whenever you're asked to expand this type of question where you've got x plus 4 squared, there is at least always one student who always makes the assumption that x plus 4 squared is to think, oh right, I remember my teacher telling me, or sir telling me, that you multiply everything outside the bracket by everything inside the bracket. So here you think, oh, x squared is x squared and 4 squared is 16. So the most common wrong answer is people leaving their answer like this. Now, unfortunately, that is completely and utterly wrong. Do not do that. Now, if you think back to 2 squared means 2 times 2, 5 squared means 5 times 5, 101 squared means 101 times 101. So if you had x plus 4 squared, then what that means is x plus 4 times x plus 4. So using your grid method, what this is then becomes, now if I just remember this is x squared plus 16, we can then combine where the error is made. So doing the box, I've got x plus 4, x plus 4, and this is probably a really rubbish grid. So I've got x squared, 4x, 4x and 16. So that equals x squared plus 4x plus 4x plus 16. And combining the two middle, we get x squared plus 8x plus 16. Now that there is the correct answer, and doing it this wrong way of just squaring the two things inside the bracket is flawed because you miss out on that 8x. So always, always, always remember that when you've got a square outside a bracket, it basically means this. And again, if I was to use the loop method, let's just quickly show you that. So I've got x plus 4, x plus 4, x times x is x squared, x times 4 is 4x, 4 times x is 4x, and 4 times 4 is positive 16, giving me an answer of x squared plus 8x plus 16, and there is your final bit. And so there's your final answer, and that just simplifies to give you 8x. So if we have a look at just 3 quick questions on this then, and let's have a look at what you should have. So again, pause the video if you want to have a go at these questions yourself. So for the first one, we've got x plus 2, x plus 2, and if you expand that out, we get x squared plus 4x plus 4. For question 2, we've got x minus 4 squared, which equals x minus 4, x minus 4, which equals x squared minus 4x minus 4x plus 16, which gives us x squared minus 8x plus 16 as your final answer. And then finally for question 3, which combines what we talked about, x plus 1 squared, 2x plus 1 equals, so expand the brackets out, we get 4x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 1, and then just combining those two things together, we get 4x squared plus 4x plus 1, and there is our final answer. Now, there are a couple of things that you need to be aware of. One of them is, now the grid method and the ways in which I've structured it, both with loops and with the grid, work fine when you've got your letter and then plus minus a number and a letter plus minus a number. Now what happens if you had a number plus minus a letter against a letter? So let's say if the order in which the brackets are written is slightly different. Now this is where understanding what it is you're doing really comes into play. So having a set method that works, now 9 out of 10 times it is always going to be the letter that comes first, but again you might get a question that tries to fool you out to test your understanding. So let's have a look at a question where we had 6 plus x and we've got, let's go for 10 minus x. So let's say we've got something that looks like this. Now if I set up my grid, doing the grid method, so I'm going to do this exactly the same, because this part doesn't really make a difference. I mean, I've got 6 plus x and I've got 10 minus x. So filling in the table, I've got 10 times 6, which is 60, 10 times x, which is positive 10x, 6 times minus x, which is minus 6x, and minus x, well, x times x is x squared, and I've got a plus and a minus, which means it's a minus. Now when I write down these four these four terms that I've written in red, the order is slightly different. I've got 60 plus 10x minus 6x minus x squared. Now, as we've said, the only things that you need to combine are the things with x's in this particular case when you're collecting the like terms. So here I've got 60, which stays the same, and I've got 10 minus 6, which is positive 4x minus x squared. So it really is important that you're understanding where the collect like terms are. It's not always going to be necessarily these two grids. It all depends on how you write them. So again, it's only the things with single x's that you tend to find that you are combining. Now again, what I've just said is again kind of flawed, because what happens if I add a squared inside a double bracket? Like this. So again, if I set up the grid, now if you did the loop method, that's entirely up there, you should still get the same answer. So I've got x squared plus 1 x plus 3. So again here I've got x times x squared, which gives me x cubed, x times 1, which gives me 1x, 3 times x squared, which gives me 3x squared, and 3 times 1, which gives me 3. Now if I write those things out, I've got x squared plus 1x plus 3x squared, I should say, plus 3x squared plus 3. And as you can see, I've got, in terms of my x cubes, I've just got one thing that's got x cubes. So if I just put a box around these four things, that in this particular expression I haven't got any like terms. So if I look at the x cubes, well, I've only got one of them. If I look at the x squared, well, I've only got 3x squared. If I look at the single x's, I've just got 1x, and if I look at just the numbers, I've got 3. So actually, with this particular question, there is no collecting like terms. I'm just writing the equation as it is, and that would be fine. The next thing also comes into question is what happens if you had x plus 1, and then let's say you had x squared plus 3x plus 1, let's say. Now again, if I was to use a grid, then that's absolutely fine. So let's just set this up. Now because I've got 3 in one bracket, it means I'm going to have that one going across on my horizontal bars. Let's get to the colour pen. So here I've got x plus 1, and then I've got x squared plus 3x plus 1. So filling in the boxes, I've got x cubed, I've got x times 3x, which is 3x squared. I've got 3x times 1, which is just 1x. I've got 1 times x squared, which is just x squared. 1 times 3x, which is just 3x. And 1 times 1, which is just 1. Now, in terms of the x cubed, so I've got, if I just highlight the like terms, well, that's the only x cubed I've got. Then if I look at my x squareds, well, that's got an x squared, and that's got an x squared. And then if I look at the thing with, let's use this blue, with just single x's, I've just realised that, I don't know how, let's use grey, hopefully that doesn't rub over the, no it doesn't, that should be okay. And then finally I've got the box with just a single number. So what colour have we not used? Let's use this light blue. And we've got this here. Now what I've now got to do is I've now got to write down the like, collect the like terms. So I've got one yellow box, so that's x cubed. Now in terms of my two highlighted pink boxes, I've got 3x squared plus another x squared, which gives me 4x squared. Then if I look at the light blue tabs or the grey tabs, I've got 1x plus 3x, which is 4x, and then I've just got a plus 1. And as you can see, I'm not going to combine them any further because I can only combine x cubes with x cubes, x squareds with x squareds, single x's and numbers, and that is it. So as well as important it's being able to just kind of go with the flow with regards to how you set your boxes and thinking, well, when I've got double boxes, the only thing I need to join are going to be this box here and this box here. We can see that when you've got different types of questions that's not actually true, and I won't be doing my job correctly saying that this is always going to be the case, and which is why it's really important you understand what it is you're doing. Now the three questions that you can see on your screen now are quite extensive questions that might be quite rare for them to come up on your exam, particularly at a foundation GCSE level, but that it could easily happen because technically you are still expanding two brackets together, which is going to be on your syllabus. So it's really important you understand what it is you're doing and look out for the little changes that you may see in your questions. So moving on to, let's have a look at some exam style questions, or a contextual question where it's not as obvious and the layout isn't as obvious that it's involving expanding double brackets, when actually it is. So in this particular question we're asked to find the expression for the area of each shape, of each of the following shapes. Now the key word in this particular question is expression. So that means we're not actually looking for a physical number, because obviously, as you can see from the two shapes we've got, is we're not given the dimensions in forms of numerical numbers. So it's going to be difficult to give our answer as a fixed number because we don't know what the actual exact lengths are. The lengths are based on using some form of expression. So first thing we need to do is establish what type of shape it is. So it's a rectangle, and to work out the area of this rectangle, it's the base times the height, or length times the width, whichever you prefer. So from this, if I look at the base as being x plus 3 times the height, which is x minus 4, I don't know why I put plus 4 there, let's get rid of that, and there we go, minus 4, and again the key thing to remember is that is exactly the same as x plus 3 times x minus 4. Remembering that one of the rules of algebra is we don't use the multiplication symbol, instead we just merge the two things together, which is why it looks like this line here. So from that, what we now need to do is use the grid or the loop method to expand this out, in which if we expand it out correctly we get x squared minus 4x plus 3x minus 12, and collecting the like terms we get x squared, so the area is going to be equal to x squared minus 1x, or just x, minus 12, and that there is your final answer. Now moving on to the second question, well this is a triangle. Well, to work out the area of a triangle, it's base times the height, all divided by 2. Now if you want to go for half base times height, again, not a problem, but I'm just going to go for this formation of the area of the triangle. So if we take this as being our base, and this as being our height, then to do b times h, then that's going to be x plus 2 times 2x plus 6. And again, using the grid or the loop method, whichever you prefer, if we expand that correctly we get 2x squared plus 6x plus 4x plus 12, and join them up, we get 2x squared plus 10x plus 12. Now we've not finished the question here because all I've done there is I've done the base times height. What I now need to do is do the base times the height divided by 2. So in other words, I need to halve everything that is in that above line. So if I change colour, what I'm now going to do is halve everything that I see in this line. So I'm going to end up with 2x squared divided by 2 is just x squared, 10x divided by 2 is 5x, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. So the area of that triangle as an expression is x squared plus 5x plus 6. And that's just an example of where expanding double brackets can appear not in its normal format, but more contextually and kind of cross-topic with area, and maybe potentially with other topics as well. So it's just a case of just being mindful and just breaking the question up to what would make questions easy, and writing the formulas down certainly does help, and then replacing each of the terms in the formula with the algebraic expression.